I am very excited for today's video because I've got my hands on one of those things that I've been after for years. This is an HP Thinkjet printer. Now, this printer falls into a very unusual category because it is a dot matrix printer, but it is not an impact printer. And that is because unlike most dot matrix printers that use pins to push a ribbon into the paper, this is an inkjet printer. But not only is it just an inkjet printer, it is the first inkjet printer. Now, there is quite a lot that is interesting and unusual about this printer, which is why I've been wanting to get one for so long, because it is an inkjet printer, and we have our ink cartridge right here. That's it. This is also a really nice system because the print head is integrated into the cartridge, which means that you replace that when you replace the ink. So it's actually a pretty robust system, so robust, in fact, that that ink cartridge is brand new, as ordered only a few days ago, that is still available on Amazon. Because despite this thing being from 1984, this mechanism survived long after the printer. Now, this particular printer I have, actually I opened this again, we're going to be opening up and fixing because the paper bail should just latch in place here, but on one side it has broken loose. So I'm hoping that I can get in there with some baking soda and super glue and repair that, but I won't know until we get in there. But there's just so much that's interesting about this printer that I want to explore as we get into it. So yeah, let's get started on that. Now, I want to first start off by taking a closer look at that ink cartridge because that is what is so revolutionary about this thing as opposed to impact printers. But we're not going to take quite as much of a look at this one because I have the original one that came with this printer, which is probably going to mark up my hands, and I'm probably going to have to remove this blue tablecloth so I don't ruin it. But this is the original ink cartridge, and you can actually just barely see a little HP logo down in there, which is pretty cool to see. But up here, we can see just the few lines there that are part of the print head and how this thing actually works. Now, this one is not functional anymore, despite actually having ink inside of here. Now, this is kind of a cool thing about these cartridges. This ink in here is a bladder that just contains all of the ink inside of there. You could theoretically puncture this and then refill it if the cartridge still worked. But what has happened here is the ink inside of this has weeped down the front as this device has sat for nearly 40 years, and it has corroded some of the traces going to the print head. Now, on the print carriage, there are contacts that connect to this and then a ribbon cable that goes off to the internal logic for the printer, and that's how it controls the print head. But since the traces here have just dissolved, this one did not work anymore, and this is not really repairable. So a word of warning, if you have one of these, you probably want to remove the print cartridge. Now, like I said, I was able to buy a brand new print head for this, and accompanying ink cartridge, so it's still extremely usable. From my understanding and reading, these are still in use in some industrial printing applications and devices like receipt printers, so these are likely going to be made for a very long time. Now, it's really cool seeing some of the different changes that they've made with this printer because it is inkjet instead of impact. For example, there is no platen. We just have the tractor points here because this does actually take tractor paper. It's not a friction feed printer. But it has these sand-coated wheels and this bar instead of a full rubber platen because the print head does not need to press against anything to leave ink behind. It does also kind of suck because getting paper properly aligned in here has been a bit of a pain with the bad paper bail here. It's really not helped, but the different tractor feed things, I guess that one's actually fixed, but the other side here is loose to accommodate slightly different widths of paper. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like that. I suspect it is, but it means that it's difficult to get the correct width, and frequently with impact printers you can kind of rely on the platen to take up some of the slack and press the paper into it, but you don't have that here because we just have the two wheels and the paper bail that presses into them. Even this side is not great, so I can understand how the other side broke. There we are. So yeah, the paper bales run up against that, and it just feeds the paper through there. It's really interesting. Now, the model printer I have here is a 2225C. There were many different variations of this printer. This one is a parallel printer with an internal power supply, but there was also an RS-232 printer, an HPIB printer for the Series 80 or Series 100 computers that we actually saw in my last video on the HP catalog. And there was an HPIL version that allowed you to interface with their calculators like the 41CX or the 71B. So there were a lot of different versions of this printer, which is part of why it's taking me so long to get one. Now, real quick, these mode select dip switches are unusual for an LPT printer. That would have made sense if this was an RS-232, because you'd probably use this to configure your baud rate, bits, parity, etc. But on an LPT printer, this is usually used to configure different things like the types of line ends. Is it a new line? Is it a carriage return? Is it carriage return new line? And those kinds of things. And there are some other settings that you need to adjust. This is actually working perfectly for me, so I haven't looked up what these jumpers do yet. I've found a brochure for this. I haven't looked for a manual yet, but since it works, I have not really felt like I needed to. But this may have some interesting options like that. I definitely had to configure that for I have a printer adapter for a Commodore PET, actually, that I want to do a video on at some point, and I've had to adjust those for that. So those are really not needed as long as the printer works. So yeah, probably won't be messing with those in this video. All right, as we move on here, I want to get in here so I can try working on that paper bale. And I was noticing that I'm going to need Torx bits to get in here, which is just lovely. But I also saw the bottom here where we have, FCC ID, warning, don't open it, basically, who it's made by, where it's made, but then also what it is. Printer. That's it. Like, if you look on the bottom of a Model M keyboard, it says IBM Model M keyboard or something like that, but this just says printer. It doesn't say HP Thinkjet printer on the front. It doesn't say printer anywhere on the back, so I guess they just had to put printer right here on the bottom, just so you knew what it was, just in case, I don't know why, but I think that is absolutely hilarious. Okay, now let's get this thing open. I have not opened this yet, so I don't know what I'm in for. The integrated power supply does scare me a little bit, but it has worked for me so far. We will be checking that out for sure later, but I want to try and get that paper bale fixed because I've had to tape it up to do that. Okay, do I need to remove that one? Probably, but I'm just curious. I'm not too sure. Oh, well, that's good to know. Nope, at least not for that. Okay. All right, the top will disconnect easily enough. Those are buttons for resetting the printer, doing a line feed or a form feed, so that's what those do. Now I can take a look down in there. So line filter is integrated into the connector, so that kind of sucks. So that can't be replaced, but at least is not REFA, so it's probably not going to blow. These capacitors are older. This is probably around 1984. I'll see if I find a date on a part at some point while I'm looking in here to see if I can age this. Actually, that motor may have a manufacturing date. Doesn't seem to. But yeah, this should be with some better caps in here. It's cool seeing the custom HP chips in there for this thing. Not quite sure why, other than they could, because, I mean, it is just a parallel printer. Maybe to control the thermal processing for the ink. Why is there a ribbon? Oh, wait, yeah, because of this. I was frustrated that there was like a keyboard style ribbon cable, but actually, yeah, that makes sense since it has one on the front. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at that paper bale problem here. So why is this all floppy? Oh, looks like there's probably just a screw missing. Yeah, screw just goes there. Man, I don't even have to do a plastic repair. So yeah, this side, there's just a pin and then a C-clip, but oddly, it doesn't go all the way through. So it looks like it was meant to be a post. So what will probably make the most sense to repair this is to drill that out and then put a bolt through there. So let me dig around here. I bet one of the M3 bolts I have in a kit would probably work very well for that. So let me go find that. Okay, I've got the M3 bolt kit here, and they're just a little too big. I could drill out the aluminum and that, whoopsie, and put it in there, and I may end up doing that, but I want to explore all my options first, make sure I don't have any smaller bolts, although I really don't know if I do, because, yeah, these are getting pretty down there for size. So, yeah, let me just poke around some more and see what I can do. And for the record, I heard a loose piece noise in there. I do have that metal post, but it is literally just a metal post. I mean, I could probably put this back in there and push it in place, but it's just going to fall out again because it's not being held in there well. I mean, I could just do that, but I'm not sure if I want to because it was falling out. And I'm looking at this side. This seems a little off there possibly as well, but that does tell me that it'll work once I end up going with whatever solution I decide to. So it is a repairable part, but I don't know if leaving that partially loose, because I mean it will just probably, I don't know, maybe it won't pull back out. Maybe if I'm not using it inappropriately because I know to pull from the center, maybe that will be fine. I don't know. Let me poke around for different size bolts, see if I can find some. If not, maybe I'll just try going with that. It retained the part before, and I know to look out for it, so maybe it won't be an issue. All right, I looked all over for different bolts. I could order some, but honestly, this really seems pretty robust here. I'm wondering if maybe someone just bent it weirdly and it popped it out, or maybe when it was being shipped to me, something happened, but it doesn't seem to want to come out, and it's not actually all that easy to get out. So I think it might be fine. So I think I'm going to go ahead and not worry about it. If it becomes a problem later, I can always drill and do a bolt mod on it, so that won't be an issue. And the spacing really is not a problem. If I move the cartridge all the way over, that's it. There's so much space in here still for a bolt head or something, so it will not even remotely be an issue if I decide to go that route. But now I think I'm going to go take this outside with an air compressor and blow it out because it really needs it. I was thinking about disassembling it, but there are so many bolts holding all of this down, and then there's wire linkages and gears and stuff, and I decided it's not really worth trying to take it fully apart. The bottom is clean. I'm going to be doing a bit of cleaning on the top here in a moment, but I don't think the bottom plastic really needs wet cleaning all that much, so I'll just hit it a little bit from the outside. So let me go blow this out, and then we'll continue. Yeah, that made a big difference. I didn't do the ribbon quite as much because I didn't want to potentially tear that. I can just wipe that off with my finger here, but yeah, everywhere else that improved it immensely, especially around the gears and stuff. But yeah, that's all that took. Now for the lid, it seems like it's slightly yellowed, but I think that's just from being touched a whole bunch. So I'm hoping just wiping it off here will restore it a bit. Looks like some of the oil may have seeped in, but that's definitely looking better. So I'm just going to go ahead and wipe this off a whole bunch. Wow, what is that? And see how this goes. I was hoping to avoid bringing a melamine sponge into this because it always makes such a mess, but it's definitely going to need that. All right, that is as good as this is going to get. There's still a little bit of yellowing, but it's really soaked into the plastic there, so that's not going to come out very easily, but overall this looks a lot better. So I think I can start putting it back together now. this didn't need too much work. I just wanted to make sure that it was all looking good and correct before I tried to do anything with it. Okay, so that lid goes on there first, in a really weird way. So I guess that just bends onto the plastic. So, I mean, it's cost efficient, that's for sure. I gotta plug in the button, so. If you heard my phone ring, I literally just got the extended warranty call. So stupid. Alrighty, let's get these two together. Like that. Bingo. Okay, I'll just get the screws back in. And there we go. That printer is ready to rock. Alright, I've got it connected to power, so let's watch it whir to life. Oh yeah. Alright, I want to get this thing set up to demonstrate here, but loading it with paper has been a huge pain for me. There are no platen knobs, which sucks a lot. I really hate that. On any printer like this, they should just have platen knobs. I don't care what crazy fun features it has, it just needs that. In addition to that, though, this printer has a really bad habit of doing full form feeds, and it's kind of difficult to get it to work with that. So let me go ahead and attempt to load this in here. So first off, most normal printers, you load the paper and then you'll like clasp it onto the guides here, but not this one. You have to feed it through, all right, and then you pull it into place, but you have no way of going down at all. This is not possible. So you kind of just have to put it in there and then hope for the best. Now, I'm going to press the paper ready button here, the blue one, and it's going to reset, and it's going to pull, I believe, a whole sheet of paper through. No? Okay, it's going to call that good. Well, at least there's that. But from here, we can do a line feed, which will move it one line. And the other button is form feed, and that will push a whole sheet of paper through. So there is that. One thing to note, when you fill a, or put paper into a printer like this, I should say, and you do the page reset, it decides that that is the point on the paper in which you want to start typing. So even though the paper, the next sheet, actually goes all the way up to here, it will start printing there, and it'll keep track of how many lines it is. That is probably one of the things that can be configured with the dip switches there, is how long your paper is. There's a standard line length for continuous feed paper like this, so it is working on the assumption that it is a standard length right now. So what I want to do at this point, though, is get the paper fed back in so I can print on this first sheet, but there's no way to go back. Going back on printers isn't usually that easy, because you'll get to this tear point and then these can tear and it will start to jam up, so it's not that great. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to form feed the rest of this through. You can also try putting the lid on there, see what that's like. Okay. And then I think there's one more sheet. There we are. So it is a little annoying. That actually went really easily. Having the paper pail work is, I guess, important, because that made a huge difference there. So let me get one sheet fed in again now. Here's another issue. Okay, so way back in here, right there, there is a brush, and the head of the print head goes over that, and it's used to clean it. But it's also positioned exactly along the tear point for one side of the tractor, and half of the time it starts to tear them apart, and then the paper just goes through without the tractor on it. So I think it just started that because I heard it. I'm going to try and push it through over to the side a little bit. Yeah, can see there, it just started to separate. So this thing is really not easy to load. This is one of the most difficult to load printers I've used. So yeah, it's a little frustrating. All right, for my first test of this printer, we're going to use my Tandy WP2, which is a word processor that has a parallel printer output, which makes it perfect for something like this. What's kind of funny is I actually got this printer with a Model 100, and I'm pretty sure this is what it's been used with up until now, so it's kind of fitting to use it with a WP2 instead. The Model 100 needs a lot of work. It has a lot of bad capacitors, so this is going to be getting a restoration video at some point, but for now, the WP2 is fully functional, so we're going to work with that. Okay, so I've got everything connected here. The first thing I need to do now that these are all set up is I'm going to have it rehome the print head on there so that it knows where it is, and then I'm going to create a new test document on the WP2, and from there we can actually print something. So let's just go ahead and print out the name of the printer first. HP Thinkjet, actually I think it's capital J, 1, 2, 3, 5, C. All right, so I will now do a print command, and alrighty. Well, it's doing a full form feed because, again, it loves to do that. 2 pages? This might be the WP2, except it says it's done sending commands. But, alright, so there we go. HP Thinkjet 2225C. It works. It printed it right in the middle of the page, but, oh well. That's probably a combination of the WP2 here having a layout set, and the printer having its own idea of where the page start is, but it will work. Okay, I've typed out all of the standard characters on the WP2, and I'm going to go ahead and print them on the printer now. That is so fast! That is really cool. So the sales brochure for this thing, I was able to find a copy of that on HP's website where they still host it, actually mentions how this can print at 150 characters per second, which is so quick for then. My Microline 92 is 120 characters per second, and that thing's pretty blisteringly fast. But they also tout that you can print 150 characters per second in bold as well. Now, I'm not sure how to do bold on the WP2, and it's not super easy to do, but bold is usually done by double typing a character offset by 1 dot. And an impact printer would have to strike the platen twice in order to create 2 prints of a character. However, this, because it's Inkjet, can just print the character again, or print it and then print it again without needing to strike twice. It might even be able to just leave the ink dots open and just kind of smear it across. So this is a super fast printer. This thing was probably amazing when it first came out. It is really interesting to look at the character print on here because it's not an impact printer, but it's still dot based, and it's just very strange. They're also surprisingly uneven. I feel like maybe printing a little slower so that the letters aren't as wobbly might not be a bad idea. But unlike a dot matrix printer, there isn't a whole lot of mass on this thing, so little vibrations probably bounce the print head around quite a lot. But yeah, I think these look really good. Can't quite tell how many dots the print is, but it definitely seems to be a higher resolution printer, like that the 7 there that has the line at the top and then the little serif going down. That's pretty good. So yeah, it's definitely an impressive printer. All right, now that it's all ready to go and clearly working, let's try it out with a computer. And I'm going to be using it with the Tiny Pentium because it just fits so well. The printer itself is tiny in its own way, so yeah, this seems perfect to me. So I'm going to go ahead and get some paper loaded in here. This is still really annoying to do. And yep. The tractor feed portions are pretty much just getting shredded, like I was mentioning they do. Yeah, this thing really sucks to load with tractor paper. After I did some more testing, I think it can actually friction feed, so that's fine, but you do have to load it all the way into that point to get it to work. But It is doable. So I would have normally just set up the drivers first, but I actually noticed that there is an HP Thinkjet driver in here. Yeah, Thinkjet 2225C. So yeah, let's give that a shot on the printer port. Yeah. Would you like to print a test page? I don't know if I've ever done this from dot matrix. I've done it from a wheelwriter, but not this. It's doing graphics. Whoa, that is cool. It is going to need to be configured because it's doing double new lines. That might be something I can change with the dip switches on the back. I need to go look at the manual. I'm going to turn this off. All right, the configuration here is different. I need switch 1 to be down. That is how carriage returns are interpreted. So if it's up, it's interpreted as a carriage return line feed. That's probably because this was being used with that Model 100, and it may output the escape sequences differently. But now, let me put this back and see how it works. Okay, that is set. I restarted the printer. I'm going to print the test page again. Perfect! That is super cool. This text is rendered, and then being scaled onto here. I'm going to continue looking at the dip switches because I've noticed that it has some really tight margins, so there may be some more to configure yet still, but it's all totally legible. This is a really high DPI dot matrix printer, so this is really nice. I can't believe I've never tried this before. Graphic printing on dot matrix is awesome. Alright, I only have one more thing left to print on this, and it's going to be at the end of the video, so you're going to have to stick around for a moment if you want to see it. But that's pretty much everything I have on the HP Thinkjet 2225. Being the first inkjet printer, I am really surprised and impressed by it. This thing rocks. This has quickly become one of my favorite printers I now own, and that's actually saying something because I have a plethora of them. This thing is so tiny, so cool, and so capable. I was not expecting the Windows drivers, but they are great and really show off the high-resolution image capabilities, so I am super happy with this thing. If you enjoyed this video, you may want to subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, I am on Patreon. But for now, that's it, and I'll see you next time.